Cigar Thoughts broadcast. I'm your host, Jacson Bevens, writer over at fieldgoals.com. Really special show for you guys today. Really excited about a couple of guests we have in the second segment. Matt Nichols, you guys are familiar with, and his old offensive line mate, Isaac Williams, are going to come on in the second part of the show, and really excited about that. With me right now, my editor, the man in charge of your favorite field goal or favorite Seahawks website. This is Danny Kelly. Thanks for coming on, Danny.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
And as per the usual, I've got Brent Cole, editor-in-chief of What's Up magazine. Saw him at the Snoop Dogg show last night.
Good.
Another win. Another week, another win. I think that's 7 of their last 8 now. And it was interesting because the game to me just felt really anticlimactic the whole way through, right? We didn't feel, or I didn't feel like we were really going to learn anything about the team, barring some kind of like meltdown.
Right.
And in a way, I'm sort of grateful for that 15-play opening drive by the Browns, because it kind of put us on notice, like, hey, we're going to actually have to play some good football to beat this team. And then
this is an NFL team.
Yeah, right. And I actually thought, all things considered, Manziel looked pretty good, especially early on.
Would it look better if his receivers could catch?
Yeah.
They had like 5 drops.
Yes.
Like really bad drops.
Yes, and a dropped interception. So,
yeah.
I mean, that could have been a closer game than it was. I didn't think that the Seahawks sparkled in that game.
But it didn't seem like that was the type of game they were gonna. I mean, it wasn't. Yeah. It was a game to just kind of get through. I think, that it was. They weren't necessarily going to blow them out. They were going to.
Yeah.
They were going to do well. The Manziel was, had a good game against San Francisco the week before. They're going to kind of not hold anything back. So, it had the possibility of not necessarily being a barn burner, but, just kind of be a game that we needed to do.
I will say that there is, and I agree with you, I will say there is one thing that made this game uniquely interesting, and that was the running back situation.
Yeah. For sure.
And that was the thing I had my eye on the closest. And if you've been reading my stuff or been watching the show, I'm hashtag Team C Mike all the way. Super glad to have him back. But what we saw for the first time since they drafted him in the second round was not courtesy carries here and there, not change of pace stuff. For the last 3 quarters, they really leaned on Christine Michael as part of a Seahawks running game. Not just, hey, we have to run, let's give it to them, but we are going to run our offense, and we're going to run it with Christine Michael, whether it's left side, right side. We're going to trust him to pick up blitzes, all of that. And I thought Bryce Brown was good. He had one really nice run. He looked decisive. I just think we were all reminded there's something extra with C-Mike. Brent, when you were watching the running backs, and Derek Coleman had a few carries as well, didn't do much. But what kind of stood out to you?
2 things. I was surprised how much Derek Coleman didn't do. He seemed to, he kept just losing his feet as he was getting going. It
looked like Turbin.
Yeah, just couldn't keep upright and go. And it was C-Mike. You saw there was one play where he went through, I don't know, he got 6-7 yards, head down, smashed into somebody. Yeah. And then tried to turn and keep going and got a couple more yards. Didn't get up and celebrate, didn't do anything like that. There's an article in the Times today about how Earl Thomas had talked to him before the game about not doing any of that stuff and just channeling that energy back into the game. And you really got a sense of what C-Mike could be if he had gotten, with his head straight, because he put in the extra effort, he got the extra yards, and then it was his job, and that's what he did. He got back up, and he kept grinding, and I was incredibly impressed with how well he played, and I liked the way Pete Carroll ran all 3 guys. It kind of kept things off balance, and I wouldn't be at all surprised this week that I know that Coleman's not supposed to be in the mix necessarily for the running backs, and they're saying, Brown and C-Mike, but it wouldn't be surprising at all if it was 75% C-Mike and kind of Brown to mix it up a little bit.
My guess, and tell me what you think about this, Danny, my guess is, they signed Brown before they signed Christine Michael.
Yeah.
2, I think that is probably important to the coaches to not just give Chris and Michael the start.
Absolutely.
And to not just, hey,
they're
welcome
still
back.
not
You're the best, the best of a bad situation, so here's your starting job that you've been waiting for. They gave it to Bryce Brown, and then Christine Michael took it from him, which is what they've been waiting for him to do.
Yeah.
Moving forward, what do you think we see?
I mean, I think it's going to be... I mean, Pete Carroll's the master manipulator, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of been his thing forever, and he always prides himself on like being able to handle all kinds of personalities. And I think that they were looking for exactly what Chris and Michael did when he came back, which is like Pete Carroll even said, he came back quietly. He's not like doing anything like boisterous or celebrating ridiculously.
He didn't come back in the American flag.
Right.
That's a
outfit.
Shame.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
I mean, he could do that once he earns it. But
Yeah.
Right.
I think the whole thing is he's gone through this he's been humbled, and you can hear it from him. You can hear it from his teammates. His teammates actually seem to like really love him. Which is cool.
They're like seem legitimate. You don't hear as many quotes about a player doing well, like almost unsolicited, from teammates like that very often. I know Bruce Irvin gave him some, public daps on Twitter and stuff. Like that's a cool thing.
Yeah, but that, I mean, with that in mind, I think Pete Carroll is going to continue to manipulate the situation so he doesn't revert to whatever it was that was keeping him from developing earlier in his career. So with that, I bet you that Bryce Brown or Derek Coleman will start, get the first couple carries.
Yeah, I agree.
Kind of dangle the carrot in front of him some more. You know what I mean, and see how he reacts, and if he can continue to be consistent like that. I think eventually
He seems to know too that he is so far in the doghouse and so lucky to just be there that he's going to take advantage of any opportunity he has, which is.
I mean, he could legitimately not have a job ever again if he gets cut again.
Yeah.
So.
Or he could be on the team next year.
He could be like a
backing
legit,
up Rawls, or
that
even
would be
pushing Rawls a little bit.
That's
Try not to let myself
I know.
excited about that, because he would be the perfect guy to back up Rawls next year, assuming Lynch retires, which I think he will.
Yeah.
Can you imagine splitting 350, 400 carries between those two in a season?
So it's like, again, it's, fool me once, because every year it's like, man, C-Mike, he's so explosive, he looks so freaking good in like training camp, and then he never gets any carries or whatever, and when he does, it's like, oh, it's really exciting, and then the next play he fumbles or whatever, and he hasn't like actually fumbled.
They left him in on passing downs. He didn't have any catches, but they left him in on passing downs.
Some good blocks.
He can lay the wood on chip
big
blocks.
time.
He's knocked some dudes over. He seems to know he's doing it now. I mean, that's like, that's like complimenting someone for something that's pretty simple, because it's his third year. It's his third season.
He's 24, right?
Something like that.
So there's, when we're dealing with these players, there's always almost an assumption that they are going to be as mature as we are now.
Yeah.
And at 22,
millionaire.
Oh yeah, at
all
22,
of a sudden,
millionaire. Girls all over the place. People want. Yeah, I mean, I won't even go into what.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. If I was in my young 20s and I became a professional athlete,
and you're really hyped,
and in our age, we did Facebook. You didn't have to worry about it. Twitter, you didn't have to worry about it. Like it wasn't what it is now. And you've heard me say it on the show before, but this is why I try and reserve judgment of the personal lives of celebrities, because we just
don't know.
We're not breathing that air. It's just different. So, Chris and Michael was extremely hyped. We added to that when he was drafted. But I think, and either of you feel free to jump in if you disagree, I think that Chris and Michael is capable of a 3 or 4 game stretch, getting 20 touches a game, and still allowing the offense to run the way that it is.
100%.
My wonder is what happens if he fumbles next week. Like how short is that leash, or is it, you know what, give him the ball back on the next play and rebuild the confidence, or hey, all right, it's Bryce Brown's time. That's what's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that will be interesting. I don't know what will happen with that. With Rawls, he fumbled, and they just kept going at him.
Right.
I mean, but like he earned that.
Yes, exactly.
But again, it's the fine line between like, do you give up on this dude again? Are you like frustrated and like go away from him, or do you like think like, okay, well, we probably need him for the next couple games. Let's like try and play the psychological game, like pump him back up, give him the ball again.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to decide what to do there.
Well, and his fumbles last year would be different than his fumbles this year, because last year he wasn't showing the humility and the focus. So if he's fumbling now and he's got the focus that he's supposed to have and the humility, and he just fumbled, then Pete Carroll seems to be more of the type of coach who would pump him back up and be much more interested in getting him back in there, getting a play that really should hopefully get 5 and kind of getting his confidence back up. And especially, as you're saying, we need him.
I think it's more like cumulative. It's not like he didn't ever get carries because he fumbled a few times.
Right.
Like he was doing a lot of things wrong, I think.
Right.
It was like, that was like, okay, whatever. Like after the fumble, it's like, okay, we can't handle this anymore. But it's not like the only thing that he was doing incorrectly. I think I get the feeling that he was making lots of little mistakes that bugged him, and they ended up not being able to trust him, you know? And so, I mean, obviously you don't know how they graded him in this game, but it seems like he was on it.
Yeah.
And, you know, like you said, he was doing the blitz pickup stuff just fine.
He didn't give anybody any reason not to have him in. And I think that was, more than anything, that's what he needed to do for the game, was to not have a reason for the coach to pull him out or fans to be up in arms or anything like that. He was just good and consistent, and he did his job.
Yeah.
What was his longest run on Sunday?
I don't know.
Not long, right?
Like
maybe
10 or 15 yards.
Yeah, it
right?
wasn't. Yeah, he didn't break it for 20 or anything like that.
He averaged 5.3 yards a carry on 16 carries, not buoyed by any big 20, 30, 40 yard runs.
Right.
He was literally consistently,
Yeah.
I mean, 3 to 7 yards every time. He wasn't getting stopped at the line of scrimmage. You know, you see that with a lot of big time runners where, you know, they'll have 12 carries for 30 yards and then break a 45 yarder and their average is good and all of that.
He was actually, there was a few runs off the top of my head where there was like pressure in the backfield and he avoided it. You know, it was like the play was dead and he made something out of nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's another good, you know.
And that's the thing is, like, we don't ever watch the highlights of this or talk about the plays, but sometimes turning -3 yards into 0 yards is just as important as turning 4 yards into 7.
Like staying on schedule,
you know?
like you're getting into like 3rd and 8 versus 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 4, you know, like that's huge.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, really, not right now for the way Wilson's playing. It doesn't fucking matter. But, I mean, it really does matter, you know. So, and it completely changes the complexion of what they have to call. So, that's huge.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we've never seen a Darrell Bevell offense in rhythm like this. Well, once before in 2012.
Glimpses.
They had that 3-game stretch where they scored 150 points, which it still is crazy to me to look back. They outscored opponents 150 to 20 in a 3-game stretch. But then, you know, we've seen glimpses like you say, but this is a month now of that offense being on schedule.
It's like 5 games in a row and over 29.
Not counting kneel outs at the end of games. They've converted 41 of their last 61 third downs.
That's crazy.
67% of their third downs over the last 5 games, 4.5 games, whatever it's been, in that stretch. So, you know, we're seeing that click along at a pace that Seahawks fans have never seen before, that maybe NFL fans have never seen before, which is crazy. And my one concern was really, okay, we saw against Baltimore when Rawls went out and it was DeJuan Harris, there was no running game, right? It was Wilson's got a deal, they know he's going to throw, and they ended up beating him. And that will beat a 4-7 team, 4-18. It's not going to beat the Panthers or the Cardinals.
Right.
And so what was nice for me to see is that the offense stayed on schedule. with new running backs in, and that they didn't look like they had to deviate from what's been working, which is really, really encouraging to see. I think that there's reason to believe it can get even better than what we saw at Cleveland. I think Cleveland was a little step back. The Cleveland game was a little step back from what we had seen the previous 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Weren't quite on that level. But
we still only punted one time.
Well, they only had 7 possessions, I think, before the kneel out. I think that's a short game. That is a short game.
Well, like the whole first quarter was 2 possessions.
2 drives. And it should be noted that the Browns went out and probably had their best drive of the season. Mm-hmm. 4 for 4 on third downs. Manziel was great. Everything was on time. They were running the ball, finding the open guy.
Touchdown he threw was
that was a slick
throw
play.
A crossover, and it was awesome.
That's amazing.
And then so you kind of wonder, okay, are the Seahawks going to put themselves down the A-ball? They just confidently come out with a 14-play touchdown drive of their own.
Took the wind out of the
you got
sails immediately.
That's it's like the underdog knowing that you can't last 12 rounds with the champ. So you come out and you just throw everything you have and try and score that first round knockout, and they just take it and bring it right back, and that was your shot, right? That was your chance to steal one, and now the last 11 rounds are going to go poorly for you.
Yeah, they tried to set the tone, and the Seahawks didn't let them.
Right.
There it is.
That's a great way.
Yep.
I mean, that's why you make the big money.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like
he makes so much money. You guys, seriously, it's crazy. Your jaws would drop.
Yeah, these actually have money.
I brought it.
Yeah, he brought them. Danny brought them.
I don't believe in banks.
Yeah. We had fold-out chairs ready for this whole thing, and Danny's like, "I got you. I got some extra money couches laying around."
Anyway,
sorry.
Yeah. I don't know where we left off.
Here's the thing: you could pay Danny $1 million a year; he'd be underpaid.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would go with that too, for sure. I don't know where we're at, man.
I don't know.
I'm tired from Snoop Dogg last night, honestly. This is one of the more subdued ones we've had. I think everybody's a little drained from it.
No, I think that, they're playing. Ultimately, what matters this time of year is, are you playing football that can win playoff games? And I think they are. The thing that concerns me is they've only beaten one legit quarterback this year.
Right.
Teddy Bridgewater's not there yet. All the good quarterbacks they've played, they've lost to, except for Ben Roethlisberger. Mm-hmm. The good news is that was their most recent good quarterback. But is the Seahawks football that we're seeing right now, Danny, I'll start with you, sustainable against a Packers team, a Panthers team, a Cardinals team?
Yeah, it is. And it's, I think we talked about this on our podcast earlier today, to go ahead and expect them to be playing at the level they're playing, going forward, is don't do it. Don't expect that to happen. This is the most historic, the most prolific a quarterback has ever been in the history of the game. It's not going to continue like that.
Right.
But they are going to be more efficient, better on third down. The offensive line is protecting him a lot better, which is huge and key. The defense seems to have been, they're more they trust each other more now that Kerry Williams is gone. I do think that what they're doing is, they can, it's positive for going forward, even when they're really playing, the better teams in the NFL. And don't expect them to continue to hit on 80 or 70% of their third downs or whatever. It's just not going to happen. So don't get it in your head that it will.
9 for 11 before kneel outs.
Yeah, but they are going to be better. I think that.
I mean,
can they go into Arizona and win? Can they go into Carolina and win the way they're playing?
I believe so. Yeah, I think guys are just playing so well that Baldwin is really just nailing it. Lockett is out of control.
Yeah.
And obviously the line is they're not going up against as good a talent, but they have absolutely figured out what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then there's Wilson, and I think the defense could. I worry about the.
That's my worry, man. But those big blow the top off of the defense type throwing games have blown the top of the Seahawks defense all year long. Even when they did beat the Steelers, they gave up 1 million yards, but they were
looking at this year.
Yeah,
was just not quite as stifling.
They just might need
we finally have the offense that can overthrow it.
It'd definitely be interesting to see if, the type of stuff that works against the Vikings, Ravens, and Browns works in, and I really see 3 teams in the NFC that have at least a coin flip's chance of beating the Seahawks. Especially since all those games would be on the road for the Hawks. We're talking, obviously Packers, Cardinals, and Panthers. And I see the Seahawks as in that class. I don't know that they're clearly better than them. I think that the Seahawks' best game probably beats the Panthers' best game. I think the Seahawks' best game probably beats the Packers' best game.
You gotta hope that the Cardinals
and you gotta hope that the Cardinals don't play their best game. To be honest, that's where I'm at.
Badger being out will help out.
That's going to be huge. That is going to be a big one to see with Tyrann Mathieu out. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like, when you say their best game, I could see the Seahawks beating the Cardinals if they're.
That's
playing
true, because the Seahawks' best game will beat anybody.
I really do think that. If the Seahawks are playing their best game, I think you could easily make the argument the Cardinals could win, but I lean towards the Seahawks.
Seahawks in Arizona, NFC.
Lynch, man.
Right now, if they were playing the NFC Championship game in Arizona this week, would you take the Seahawks?
Yeah.
You would?
Yeah.
All right. That's saying something, because
the way they're playing right now, I don't think that anyone can beat them. Of course, then they could play not very well next week, but
exactly.
The way that they're playing.
The Rams have a way of bringing that out in them.
Yeah, I think that this game is going to be one of the rare times that we actually beat the crap out of the Rams.
Yeah, definite possibility.
An organization that's really in flux and with what's going on with they going to be moving and whatnot. I think they're just playing the.
As long as they don't cheap shot any of the Seahawks guys, I think that's a legit concern. I think that's a legit concern. It's going to be very, very interesting to see kind of over the next 2 weeks, especially what the nature of Week 17 is going to be if the Seahawks and Cardinals are locked into their respective playoff spots. Now you're just talking about putting putting stuff on film for if you may play each other in the playoffs. So that might be a really goofy game with the stripped down playbook.
There'll just be 5 offensive plays.
Yeah, right. So that's going to be really fascinating to see, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of chances now that the Seahawks have officially clinched their playoff berth. A lot of chances to talk about their postseason situation. We're going to take a short break here, grab some refills. When we come back, we're going to have Matt Nichols and Isaac Williams come on, and you definitely want to stay tuned for that. So we'll catch you in just a second. Welcome back. I'm joined by 2 very special guests. All of you know Matt Nichols, former all-conference offensive lineman at Pacific Lutheran University, helped them win a national championship there. Matt, great to have you back.
Always, Jacson. Thank you for having me.
Matt has been talking up Isaac Williams for a long time as really an offensive line, not only someone who played O-line with Matt at PLU, but someone that Matt went to a lot to help learn the position, and they kind of grew together. So really excited to have both of them on here. Isaac, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come on here. I feel like I've got a pretty good understanding of the game of football. But when I try and write or speak about the offensive line, I have to use generalities. And I think that most of us do, because it's a really difficult thing to understand not only what is required of an offensive lineman on a given play, but how that interacts with what everyone else is doing. And I think a lot of times we get it wrong when we say that someone missed a block, or that this play was the fault of the offensive lineman, or maybe they looked good on this, because we go by results and then work backwards and say, oh, well, it was a good running play, so the line must have done well, when that may or may not have been the case. So that's why I'm really excited for this segment, as much as I have been for anyone all season, because when folks have asked me what has changed about the offensive line, the closest I can say is Patrick Lewis is there now, and that they have had time to come together. But I don't really understand the process of that happening. You guys had to do that at PLU, and you guys obviously did it at a very high level, have the rings to prove it. So, and Isaac, I want to start with you. As you watch the Seahawks this season, I'm sure you watched similar to Matt in terms of paying attention to what the offensive line is doing. What have you seen lately that's different from what we saw in the first, say, 8 games of the year?
Sure. I think there's a few things going on. I mean, there was a lot that was asked of them. I mean, they went from having no really good idea as a working functional unit and really not having any sort of stability until basically like the last preseason game was when, for the most part, they said this is the 5 or so that we're going to go with. Mm-hmm. So they were really, I mean, there were some really amazing basketball teams around here at Seaholman and Mount Vernon where, I mean, those little kids played basketball together from the time they were just munchkins. Yeah. And the O-line's kind of the same way. I mean, without ever even looking at each other or talking to each other, you kind of got to know what the other person is doing and know where they're going to be. And so I think they didn't have any time to really functionally get to know each other on the field. And actually, in some cases, they may not have functionally had time to get to know each other off the field because I know there were some new guys as well.
Well, and a lot of guys are playing converted positions too, right? You've got your right tackle was a tight end, your left guard was a right guard, et cetera.
I spent years getting my feet right? I was a right tackle for a left-handed quarterback. So basically, if I screwed up, he was going to die, right? And so
he's still alive, so Isaac never screwed up.
And sorry, Chad, he's my brother-in-law sometimes. So when I'm mad at him, I think of when I screwed up and he just got destroyed, and I'm like, No, anyway, sorry, Chad, love you. Anyway, but so I had to get so good at making sure my post foot, my inside foot, was always forward because the worst thing that could possibly happen is a defensive end or somebody blitzing would cross my face because that's the direct line to the quarterback. Whereas everything that I do has to funnel him around my outside so the quarterback can step up in the pocket or escape or whatever it is. So the minute that I lose that post foot, I drop it back, anything happens, the floodgates open, the whole pocket loses its integrity, and just bad stuff happens. And so to all of a sudden go from being a right tackle to just Shazam, you're now a left guard.
You can do it in Madden all the time, though. You just take your right tackle and you move him left guard, and it's fine.
If I've run 5,000 plays with my left foot forward, my post foot forward, and then I can think about it all day long and run 100 reps, and then all of a sudden in the heat of everything, when you have to stop thinking and just react, if I've done something 5,000 times, my post foot's automatically on the left side, going to drop back, and I'm going to revert to my right tackle stuff. Yeah. And that's really bad, especially in the kind of vital nucleus, the center of the pocket. So, it's just, they were asked to do so much early. And, they didn't necessarily probably know each other that well. They didn't necessarily, and then they had to go into a meat grinder group of defenses where they were 3-4s versus 4-3s, and guys were coming out of nowhere and crazy stuff.
And you start with the best D-line in the NFL in St. Louis, your first game of the year. Yeah. Like, hi, here's baptism by fire.
And that tackle's a manimal. That nose guard is just a monster.
Wow, that was pretty awesome. I hope that made camera. That was fantastic.
That's cool. So I don't know. I mean, they went through a lot together, and man, if it's that was a lot to ask of that group.
Well, and I know, like myself, so Isaac was a 3-year starter at PLU, is all-conference right tackle. A very, very, very good player, very well-respected player, was team captain our senior year too, and captains were voted by players on the team. So the highest honor that you can have at PLU is being voted captain, and Isaac was one of them. I played right, I played tackle, he played tackle. My senior year I moved to center, and just that change of footwork from out at tackle where I'm playing in space and my balance foot, which is your back foot, is back further, going to center where it's more of a closed stance, was huge. And I didn't even have to change sides. Moving from right tackle to left tackle or left guard is about as hard of a change as you can possibly do because you're using your offhand too. It's not only is it your footwork, it's your hand that's down, so then your shoulders turn a little bit. The way your head's, because you have shoulder pads and helmets, the way your head sits down and the way you're able to scan is totally different. Even in a 2-point stance, when you're out at tackle, you have more freedom to swing side to side, and you'll notice it in NFL games too, where you can see the tackles making wide movements and looking. Whereas guard, your feet are closer together, and you don't have as big of a stagger, and you're not able to do that as freely. All of those things make a massive, massive difference. And then trying to learn the position too. Again, how you attack a guy, where your aiming point is different on an outside zone play for a right tackle as it is for a left guard, where you're trying to get your footwork at. All of that stuff is incredibly different and difficult. And then to do it at the highest level of this sport against some of the best players in the game. I mean, you got Green Bay, you got St. Louis. Holy crap, that's intense to start off with. And I don't think it's a fault of Drew Nowak's that he was thrown into that situation. They went with what they thought would probably be the best solution in the long term, and it didn't work out. But they were smart enough to realize, okay, we need to make a change to Patrick Lewis and let Gary Gilliam get more reps into him before moving Justin Britt back and doing something rash and bringing Alvin Bailey into left guard. They let them keep playing because they were close, and we talked about this throughout the podcast this year about that razor's edge and how close they were to being good, but they were just missing on 2 or 3 or 4 plays a game. And it's the same for an offensive line. You can block a guy perfectly, but if you don't get a hand placement on where it needs to be, that guy is going to move your arms and make a tackle in the hole, as opposed to your running back getting a 7 or 8 yard gain.
Well, and I mean, you think too about the early portions of the year. You know, I love Russell Wilson. That being said, he's so mobile and he's so all over the place. You got to remember, these guys can't see him.
Yep.
A lot of times you have to figure out where the quarterback is based on what the guy you're blocking does.
Yeah.
So if he all of a sudden starts to fight you to the right, it probably means as a right tackle that the quarterback is scrambled or rolled out. Or if he starts to try and come inside, it probably means the quarterback's either stepped up in the pocket or bailed out to the left. So it's not like he's back there going, "Hey guys, I'm going left." Right. You know, you got to feel it and adjust. And again, it's you're not doing it against
that fast.
You know, Vista Middle School. You're doing it against Julius Peppers.
Okay, so with that, right, with this baptism by fire that you're talking about, is this why we see the Seahawks saying, you know what, we're not going to invest a lot of money in the offensive line, but we are going to invest a lot of athleticism? To me, hearing you guys talk about this and about the need for adaptability, right? In order to be moved around, and hey, we're just going to keep shuffling the deck until we find what we think is the best. You know, Gary Gilliam, you look at him, he does not look like an offensive lineman. I mean, his shoulders are wider than his waist. Mm-hmm. He's a cut dude, you know. And, you know, he was a tight end in college and caught a touchdown pass in the NFC Championship game. Mm-hmm. Justin Britt, obviously, great athlete. Russell Okung, great athlete. Guy we haven't seen much yet, but Sokoli was obviously a transcendent athlete at the Combine. You see them prizing that. Is that because they're saying, we believe Tom Cable can take these lumps of clay and mold them, and so we need the most moldable guys?
So that's exactly it. And that's what we did at PLU. Offensive line was the least recruited position by Frosty. And again, our football coach at PLU...
Besides you two.
No, we were... Both of us, I mean, we're not highly recruited. And PLU never recruited offensive linemen, really. But they would find athletes and people that would work at their craft. And over time, we would become very good.
You guys were small.
Very
for an
small.
Offensive line.
Yeah.
Well, what you said about Gilliam, I mean, that's... So I think his probably, and my guess is, and I have no idea, but his main problem is he has to be very good on his technique just because he gives up weight. So you can be not as good on your technique, but be really heavy and really stout, and guys have trouble having their way with you. Whereas if you're going to be lighter, you're more mobile, but at the same time you have to be really good with your technique and really good with your feet because you're lighter. You know, you get some of those hosses, and man, they'll just literally go and then go get your buddy. So it's one of those things where, I mean, it's kind of a give and take. And so we're Gilliam, I mean, that's kind of, I think, what they do. And I think, frankly, they save money. I mean, that's if you're going to... Well,
there's no doubt they're saving money on the line. There's no question about that.
Tom Cable's really good. So, I mean, if you're there, you know, you can be the Cowboys and have a lot of money in the O-line, which is a really good ration. I mean, Cowboys are pretty good. Mm-hmm. Or you can say, well, we're going to put our money elsewhere, and we're going to trust Tom Cable to basically develop these really amazingly good athletes. And he's good teaching technique, and man, they have to be good with their technique.
Yeah, it's why if you look at baseball, they look for 5-tool players. Like they look for those athletes, and then they're like, we can turn you into a center fielder, or we can turn you into a shortstop, even if you've only played the position for 1 year coming out of high school or college, and you can be phenomenal in the major leagues. Offensive line is... There's so much to it, and with the zone blocking scheme, because there's so much movement, you don't want big, fat, slow guys. Like, you have to have good athletes with good footwork. And the difference between firing off the line at a 45-degree step, if that's what you need to be, as opposed to a flat step, if you can't do it that fast and be consistent with it over and over and over, do it 60 times a game, that zone blocking scheme will never work. You could have the big guys and do a man blocking scheme with like Nate Newton and those Cowboys line where they're just going forward. But this scheme, they are moving so much. You have to have athletes.
So, okay, so this is probably remedial for you guys, but I think this is a question that a lot of people have, and I'd love to hear you guys' explanation from the inside out. We use the term zone blocking scheme in our parlance all the time, right? And I think a lot of us use it without truly understanding, okay, what is a zone blocking scheme? You get together and on Thanksgiving morning and play football with your buddies. You line up 3 to 5 guys at offensive line. They're picking a guy across the line, and that's who they're blocking on that play, right? That's not what the Seahawks are doing, right?
Yeah.
So what is the difference? Just so that folks can hear it from people who really understand it. How does a zone blocking scheme differ both functionally and philosophically from a man blocking scheme?
You are not blocking a specific man. So you would have rules as an offensive lineman that if we're running to the left and I am a center and this man is head up on me, I'm blocking him. Or if he is on my shoulder, I am blocking him. But if he is in that gap, I am leaving him and that guard is blocking him. So there would be these different rules. A zone blocking scheme is saying we're running and we're aiming at the left tackle's butt, is where the running back is headed to. And you are going to move at a 45-degree angle that way. And if anybody crosses your face, you're picking him up. So that guy that's in the gap, if you're moving at that angle, he's going to be crossing your face, and you need to cut his legs out because you don't have a good angle to reach around and to hook block him. So that's where all that cut blocking comes from.
Yeah.
Is because you don't have the angles to actually block him upright and to get your body turned around there. So you have to go at his thigh boards or at his knees, and the thigh pads we call thigh boards. You have to aim here to get his legs to go out from underneath him. It allows you to get more people moving towards where the hole is in the attempt that the whole defense is going to flow hard that way, and then there'll be a cutback lane. So if you watch, let's say they're running a hard zone to the left, you'll watch the right tackle, Gary Gilliam, sometimes, as opposed to taking that strong line, will take that line and then hinge back, and that guy that's going to cross his face, as opposed to cut blocking him or just running him that way, he's going to try to cut him off because there's a cutback lane there too. So the running back has the option to hit the left tackle and go up, or there might be a wide open space on the back line because that whole defense has flowed so hard.
Which I'd also say, and to give some credit and some challenges with the running back situation, I would assume, never having played running back, there are certain running backs that work really well in man blocking systems. So basically we walk up to the line of scrimmage and they're lined up in a certain way, and I say, okay, I'm going to block down on him, you're going to pull around and do some of those variations versus just everybody stepping right at a 45-degree angle. So I assume there are probably running backs out there that prefer to run in a man blocking system versus a zone blocking system, meaning like Sean Alexander, he was great with the cutback, right? Mm-hmm. There are probably guys that prefer zone blocking. There are probably guys that prefer man blocking.
We're seeing it right now with DeMarco Murray, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about someone who is so perfectly built for running behind that offensive line that he's a decisive one-step cut and go running back, right? Get that forward momentum as quickly as possible. And now he has to try and be Shady McCoy and make guys miss in space and do all of that, and it's a reminder of just how important scheming for your talent is, right? Like a lot of what we assume are good and bad players are the result of scheme, right? And fit to that scheme. So that's interesting. So the Seahawks run a zone blocking system. What is then required of a Seahawks running back? That wouldn't necessarily be in
patience. Lots of patience.
Yeah.
So
and good eyes.
So
you have to. Tough. Our coach would always say tough eyes. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit. We'll break down a play a little bit later. But there's a play where the Cleveland defender doesn't have tough eyes, and Doug Baldwin gets a touchdown because of it. Simply because the receiver or the DB didn't have tough eyes. For a running back, you have to have tough eyes.
So when you say tough eyes, like disciplined eyes.
Disciplined eyes.
Yeah,
so it means. It means I am looking this way and I am focused here, but I'm not going to turn my head so far that I can't see the backside. It means I'm looking here because this backside might have an open lane, and I have to be able to see it and go that fast.
You got to remember, offensive coordinators for a half are going to bait you into looking at something. So they'll sit there and watch a corner, and they'll run a specific. So you got to realize when they run a play, like my 9-year-old will be like, "Why do they run this play over and over and over? It never works." They're doing it a lot of times so they can get a safety or a corner to start stepping up because they have a play to counteract it. Usually, maybe in the second half.
Thank you. There, you heard it from someone that has played it. Something I've been trying to say. Not every play is designed to get a touchdown. Sometimes you got to set some shit up.
Block it right. You should always do this.
Yeah, if everybody does their job, all 11 guys do it perfectly.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So let me ask you this then, just so that I can kind of understand.
Yeah.
Either of you feel free to answer this. You say patience is the first thing both of you guys said when it comes to a running back who's running in a Tom Cable type zone block system. Okay, so I've got a run that is designed to go in between left guard and left tackle, right? Why do I have to be patient? What about that is keeping me from just taking that handoff at full speed and trying to hit that gap as quickly as possible?
Because your linemen are working to get position on their blocks and to get guys down, and you don't always see the cut block happen that fast. You will see guys start to ride their defender and then cut block them and get their feet out from under them. It takes time because you're moving laterally. It takes time. Straight ahead, it's a quicker. The hole opens and it closes.
Well, if I'm blocking Matthew, and we're going right, he's going to his left, I'm going to my right. I'm going to start by pushing on his outside half and starting to try and turn his body so that I can work my butt around, because you want the running back to be able to come off of your backside. Because if I don't get my butt turned and start to turn his body, he'll play over the top of me and close the hole. So if the running back is not patient enough and just gets to the hole before I can get that to happen, the guy will play right over the top of me and tackle him. And that's that same,
it's the
happens
same.
Just symbiotically. It's almost like, too, Russell Wilson does a great job setting up blocks. He's running to the left sideline. He's got a blocker with a defender, and he does that wonderful little dip with his shoulder, and that takes the defender, stops his momentum, and allows the blocker then to continue on, seal off, and then he, without setting up the block like that, he runs him out of bounds. But he sets up the block and allows him to seal the corner.
It's the exact same thing. It takes longer for the offensive lineman to get in their position, so that's why, and I know we've talked about this on the podcast, but patient too quickly through has to be the running back's mentality. And it matters. Their target points where the running back is running is mattering if there's a 3 technique or if there's an outside shaded 3 technique or all of these little variations.
Nuances.
Where he's going to go and where his target needs to be is all based on the defensive alignment versus an overfront versus an underfront. And we could get all into the minutia of it. But all of that stuff matters. It's
and being able to read it on the fly.
Yep, and it has to be that fast. It literally has to be from the time you get to the line of scrimmage, you got 10 seconds, figure it out, go.
It's interesting, we've been talking a lot about how important it is with your footwork and mentality in a Tom Cable zone blocking run game. But really, the most transformative thing that we've seen is the pass blocking. Yeah. Russell Wilson went from literally the highest pressure rate in NFL history through 7 games to now a below average pressure rate, a far below average sack rate. He's comfortable, he's throwing in the pocket. Almost 75% of his throws over the last 5 weeks have been in the pocket. That's not something we've ever seen from Russell Wilson before. And he's obviously showing how good he is. Sheil Kapadia, who's doing an amazing job for ESPN covering the Seahawks, talked about how only Aaron Rodgers in 2009, when he set all of the records, has been a higher efficiency quarterback from the pocket than Russell Wilson is. Okay, great. He seems to be answering the question that, yes, he can throw from the pocket. My question to you guys is, why does he have a pocket now when he hasn't had one for 3.5 years?
Yeah. I think there's a lot to it. It's not just one thing. We're getting the ball out faster as a quarterback. I mean, there's no doubt Russell Wilson has done that. Darrell Bevell has changed some of the pass plays. They're running different styles of bootlegs where they're pulling the center or the backside guard to go block that backside DN so Russell doesn't have to juke him out on his own and then throw the ball. But guys are getting more comfortable in their position. And I watched a preseason game with Danny Kelly, and I don't remember, I think it was a San Diego Chargers game that we watched. And Danny was over at my house, and we were watching Gary Gilliam, and I was like, the footwork is there. It's so close to being there, but he's not there. And it's those thousands of reps that he's had because In the NFL, with the collective bargaining agreement, they can't go full pads and scrimmage and do all that stuff that they could have done in the 90s and the 80s and beyond, and previously. So their reps are game reps. You have to get a lot of game reps before you're comfortable with what a bull and pull is. And a bull and pull is when somebody bull rushes you and then yanks you out of the way to go to the quarterback.
It's the devil.
It's a
as Gary Gilliam, because if you're a big squat strong dude, bull and pull is fine, but when you're light, they throw you around like a rag doll.
Yeah,
that
so
was
you
my
have to
most hated move was the bull and pull.
Yeah, so you have to get used to that, or you have to know when a guy spin moves you where you can block him, because if a guy's spinning on you, you can actually push him and make his spin more violent. Mm-hmm. So you have to know how to move your body and then block him as opposed to just punch him. So there's all of these things that these guys have had to learn, and they've gotten the hundreds and literally hundreds of reps to do it against some really good competitors. And when you get a lot of those reps, you become more comfortable with seeing it, and your reaction time gets slower. There's 3 types of speeds. There's initiation speed, reaction speed, and decision speed. As an offensive lineman, you need to have phenomenal initiation speed, because when they say hike, you better get going. Your decision speed has to be some of the best, because you need to know that if this guy is on me and is slanting away, don't touch his ass, move to the linebacker. Or if he's here and he's slanting this way, take him. It's the same guy, but he does 2 different things. I have 2 different things to do. It has to be that fast. And then your reaction speed is, if this guy crosses my face and he starts a spin move, what am I going to do? So there's all of these things that you have to be very, very good at, and you can't learn them in practice. You can try, you can take batting practice, but until you see Randy Johnson's fastball, you haven't seen a fastball.
Yeah.
And it's that exact same thing. Until you block Aaron Donald, or you go against Julius Peppers, or there were guys in our league that you would go against and you're like, good God, it's halftime and this guy's been working. But the second half, you're like, all right, I'm comfortable with this. I know what he's done. I've seen his footwork. I've seen his tendencies. I know what to do.
Well, there's a lot of help, too. I mean, now the Seahawks are a team that chooses, like the Packers do a great job of screening and drawing.
Yes.
So one of the things, I mean, at PLU at least, many times I was overmatched physically by people. And, you could ask for help, like, hey, can you please help me with fullback or a tight end, or just somebody like in the sound bites when J.J. Watt says, you better get this guy some help. Sometimes I needed some help. That being said, those really good screen and drop teams also, they use that as a weapon to slow down the pass rush. So, and the Hawks, I mean, they like their bubble screens and that type of thing, but that is an arrow in the quiver that the Seahawks linemen don't necessarily have. They can't come out and screen 5 times. They choose not to come out and screen 5 times in the first quarter. So all of a sudden the D is like, oh, is this one of those screens?
Yeah,
How do I want to do this?
If you have a better defensive lineman and he's hesitant, anybody can block. You can block him easy.
Yeah,
it's not an issue.
Doesn't matter.
But if he knows what he's doing, he's going full speed. It's your hands full for 5 seconds, because it's going to be a battle.
Absolutely.
The screens and draws do it. Aaron Rodgers is the master of the hard count.
Sure.
I mean, he torched Seattle earlier this year, and he's torched everybody for the last 5 years with that hard count. You've seen Russell Wilson do more of that. That's one of those arrows in the quiver that Seattle has done. They've done a ton of hard counts lately. And Russell keeping the ball, we saw it on some of those.
I mean, the first part of the season,
Yep.
I love Russell, but also, so the line gave up some sacks, but also our dear quarterback who we love did not do his friends up front any favors.
I think we've been really frank about that. Yeah, so you don't got to sell us on it.
So I think, for me answering that original question, I think they've done a great job of giving. So hard counts have been good. He's done great with that. They've done a great job giving him 3-step quick passes versus 5-step or 7-step drops. So that's good pocket, quicker release. That helps a lot. And then they just had time, and they played. And frankly, as much as I love Green Bay and Arizona, I mean, they're pretty amazing teams. Baltimore and Cleveland, and I think we've seen a pretty good uptick in statistics just because we haven't had them.
Sure, and that's the other thing.
Because it's going to get real eventually. We're going to see it.
It's going to get real. It gets real this week, and it's real next week, and it's real in 3 weeks from now.
You're right.
There's 3 games in which we're going to be playing dudes.
Tosses.
No matter... Honestly, at this point, no matter how many more games the Seahawks play, every one of them is going to be against a top 10 front 7.
That's
just the reality of the situation. So we're going to see that. One thing that I do think is important, and I bring it up simply because I heard you guys talking about it between takes and before the show, is that relationship between offensive linemen and the guys whose names are in the paper, right? No one's writing articles about Isaac Williams, whether you deserved it.
Unless I did really bad.
Right. So they are writing the articles about Aaron Binger or whoever, right? How important is that relationship between you guys, those people up front who are fighting in the trenches for 60, 70 snaps a game, and the guys who are actually carrying and handling the football? Is it important, or is that just something the fans think is important?
It's hugely important, that relationship.
Really?
Massively. So a quick story.
Why? You do your job, I do my job, why should it matter?
We're professionals.
Yeah, exactly. F you if you think that. Because I've dislocated fingers, I have a shoulder that doesn't sit properly, my knees are messed up, and I've never seen my name in the paper. I've never had the TV guy come to interview me, and you
stepped on me.
Yeah. No, so it is hugely important. And to go back, there was something one time that Isaac and I did, and we were getting ready for, I think it was our last game of our year, our senior year at PLU, and our quarterback Chad was phenomenal. I mean, Division III Player of the Year.
He won the Heisman
He won the Heisman for Division
won the
III.
Heisman,
He was phenomenal. The previous game, he got absolutely crushed by a linebacker blitz and that didn't get picked up, and he got hammered. And in film, it became known to us that he was a tough sucker for standing in the pocket. So Isaac and I, before practice one day, were like, well, how tough is he? I'm going to stand here, Isaac, you take a 15-yard run, and you hit me as hard as you can, and then I'm going to get up, and I'm going to run 15 yards and hit you as hard as I can. And we're like, what the hell? He's not a tough sucker. We take hits like this all game long.
This is normal.
So this is 60 times a game I'm getting my bell rung. So there are
Here's your red jersey so they can't touch you in practice.
Yeah, exactly. So there are totally those things. The guys that were good running backs, that were good receivers, that were great quarterbacks, they let you know that they appreciated you and that they knew how hard you were working, because there was never a game we left without blood.
Yeah.
There was never a game you left, everybody got touchdowns. I didn't score a touchdown. Everybody got glory. We didn't get glory. But you just did your job, because I actually gave a damn about my running backs and my quarterbacks and my team.
So how is it different if you don't? Like, let's say you just can't stand the dude behind you.
So, okay. Little known secret. Offensive linemen are like incredibly loyal golden retrievers or cows or whatever, right? If you love us, if you treat us right, we will love you and protect you. And the biggest place you'll feel it is some dude gets all amped up and comes and picks on your quarterback. If you don't like your quarterback, you're like, hit him again, Steve.
Yeah.
But if you love your quarterback, how fast are you in there knocking the guy
I'll
down?
take the 15-yard penalty to get the guy off of my quarterback.
Absolutely.
I will take that 15-yard penalty and I'll get thrown out of the game to protect my quarterback.
Exactly.
If I don't like him and I had a quarterback in high school that I didn't like, I could give a damn less. Please beat him up. I could care less.
Unless your quarterback's Aaron Rodgers. Then, everything's built around him and you got to protect him.
Yeah.
But on the whole, you can see it. And that's that thing is if you treat your O-lineman right, if you had a guy we played with named Anthony Hicks who, he was just, it was so fun to block for him just because of how hard he worked. And you get him to the second level to the linebackers or the third level to the safeties. And the stuff he would do to those poor fools, once you got him back there,
familiar
it was so
with Aaron
fun.
Hicks, yeah.
And that's that thing where it just makes you wanna block for him, right?
Yeah.
But then you have other guys that kind of fall down and don't.
You don't feel like they're working as hard as you are.
Why am I busting my butt if you're
Why
not
am I
busting
working
yours?
this hard for you?
Yeah.
Right? Why am I doing this?
And there's all of these little things. The offensive line is an incredibly tight group.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had punk posse for tight end or for offensive linemen. We had all of these little games that we would play. We would have meetings the night before games in which we'd go to guys' house for dinner, and if you didn't show, there were penalties and all of these things.
Absolutely.
Because again, nobody gives a damn about us, but we care deeply about us and about our team.
Yep.
And we are the tightest group on the thing.
Because you have each other. O-lines and D-lines.
And still to this day, I remember what a moose call or an otter call was, or otter, outside blitz, moose, inside blitz.
Yep.
All of these things 15, 16 years later, I remember because the night before a game, we would go over and we would talk about, hey, this team will run 3 aside blitz, so are we going to out it? Or as a center, am I going to go out? And we would just do all these things outside of film study, outside of offensive coordinator there, outside of everybody. We're doing that, and we're talking about it. And it makes a difference. And Isaac and I.
And for all the receivers out there, the hummingbirds, I'm not saying that receiver groups aren't tight and they don't love each other, but it's a different vibe.
Sure.
It's just a different
You
vibe.
You told a story about Emmitt Smith, and I want you to repeat it on camera.
It was something that I had read years and years and years ago, and it was like his last year in Arizona after he had been with Dallas and had his great career, and he got his offensive linemen all BMW keys, and they're all hanging in their locker. And these guys were, I mean, you get a BMW.
Don't matter how
much you're making a year. You give me a BMW, I'd be damn happy. They go out and it's remote controlled BMW cars. The statistics he put up the following week were absolutely horrible, and that's not a coincidence. Somebody does something to me like that, every time you get hit, and if I'm standing next to you, I'm not helping you up. I mean, it's literally like F you on your own. And you do it at a professional level where you've really gone after a guy's integrity and hurt them.
Sure.
That stuff matters. And so the TVs that you got, or quarterbacks will get their offensive linemen, or taking them out to dinner, or all of that stuff, it matters. And Pete talks about everything matters.
Okay, listen.
It matters in that concept too.
So let me ask you guys this real quick, because there's another segment I really want us to get to. But today it came out, Tyrod Taylor, the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, rookie quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, bought his offensive lineman HD TVs today. Gary Gilliam tweeted the picture of it at Russell Wilson. All right, it's funny, you know. It's kind of a comical thing to think about.
Always truth and humor.
But but how much does a quarterback reaching out with a gift or something like that matter? Is that just window dressing, or is that like a legit thing?
It matters. When your wife says don't get her something on Christmas, you get her something on Christmas. When your wife said Valentine's Day is just another day,
and
it's not another day.
We're a little bit like wives.
Yeah.
We have fragile feelings on those.
Yeah, like I will be a vindictive bitch if you screw me over like that. Like
I'll do my job, but I'm not going the extra mile.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it is that.
And words matter, right?
Words matter.
If you're playing for the league minimum, I really appreciate what you do, and thank you for playing so hard.
Yeah.
But then when you get $658 million, thank you for working so hard, and a big screen TV help.
Yeah, okay, I got it. All right. We got some other stuff we got to get to. We're going to take another quick break, get another refill, and we'll finish up. So we'll be right back. So yeah, thanks for sticking with us. It's going to be worth it. We'll be right back. All right, we're going to finish up with a little roundtable discussion here. This is an episode that I'm as excited about as any we've done in 2 years. And we got a few things to cover. First of which is, I think, and feel free to disagree with me, but I think that the 2015 Seahawks has an identity that is unique unto themselves. I think that what we saw from the second half of 2012 through the Super Bowl of 2014 was basically the same thing, right? The same kind of identity, the same stars, the same people contributing in the same manner, and it was a really successful model. I think 2015's been wonky as fuck, to be completely honest with you guys. Mm-hmm. It's been a weird year with guys that not only have had personal success, but now they are being recognized both financially and nationally as being really successful, and everything that brought into it. The slow start. The Seahawks, who run the ball more than any team in the NFL over the last 3 years, are now the most efficient passing team in the NFL, right? Like, this is a very unique thing. So Brent, what is unique about this 2015
I think that
team?
actually plays right into it. That the part that I see that is different for this team versus other teams, and something we alluded to, I think it was last week. It's the first time you feel like the offense could actually beat the defense. And in the past, the identity has always been the defense, and then the offense, you didn't feel like it was fully living up to its capabilities. The receivers were called pedestrian and whatnot, and obviously we have the same receivers, and they would in no way be called pedestrian. This is the first time outside of that stretch in 2012 where you feel like the offense is humming. And that they are humming, and they are the stronger side of the ball.
I would agree with that completely. I was actually thinking that earlier today, where if the Seahawks are going to go back to the Super Bowl, I think the offense is going to carry them there. Whereas
Which is amazing. I mean, that's like it's a thought that we haven't had in years.
Yeah, think about that. And we're talking. To be fair, we're talking about the offense having to carry a defense that is second in the NFL in points.
That's what I was just about to say.
I mean, that's how blessed we are. We are talking about defense that allows 17.7 points per game as a down year, right?
Yeah, and okay, so this is something that I get all the time. Like, what's wrong? Why is the LOB different? What's wrong with them? Mm-hmm. Or the question will be like, the LOB just isn't the same. Or that's not a question, that's a statement, you know. Mm-hmm. The LOB is just not the same. And I said, yeah, that's correct. Like, they're not. This different players, first of all. You know, and frankly, and it's the same thing. I'm like, you know, you can't expect them to continue to convert 90% of their third downs for the rest of the year. You can't really expect a team to be the greatest pass defense in the history of the game 3 times in a row.
Yeah,
like, it's just, there's so many variables. There's a million variables that that went into the statistically the greatest defense of all time, right?
I think, for me personally, the reason that I think they can do very well if they play good football is they played Pittsburgh's defense, not the best in the world. Baltimore's defense, which did pretty well, but up until we played them, not the best in the world. Minnesota's defense, pretty good. That was a good game. The Browns' defense, not the best in the world. However, they're going to go against some better teams. So if we see 70% of what they've given us, and the defense gives us 70 or 80% of what they were at their absolute pinnacle. You know, the front guys start getting pressure, so the LOB.
I think the defensive line's better than it's ever been, honestly.
Yes.
Yeah.
They get that pressure. I mean, that helps those cornerbacks and safeties. Quarterbacks are under duress and uncomfortable. And I mean, that's, to me, they can win the Super Bowl if those guys play it 70 or 80%.
Well, and really, we've had the LOB in the 2015 model for 2 weeks now, with Deshaun Shedd starting and Jeremy Lane at nickel and Burley at nickel. We really
Burley had like the game.
Burley had a sack and an interception.
Cow.
We have not had that combination because guys have been out and injured, and Kerry Williams' experiment was mediocre, and then it fell apart, and then he's gone, and we have not had the LOB what we're used to, and teams are frankly attacking us differently. And so this group this year is trying to figure out, okay, teams are attacking us differently. How do we take our same defense but adjust it a little bit and tweak it a little bit and bring new people into it?
We have the new coordinator. That's something that doesn't get talked about that often, is that he's a new, young coordinator.
Yeah.
That these things do take time. I mean, as fans, always we want to jump in and we think, okay, things are going to kick ass right away.
You're right.
It doesn't work that way.
Well, let me ask you this. I want all 4 of you to answer this individually
Simultaneously?
Simultaneously.
Yes.
Yeah. Is the defense as it stands right now good enough to beat a very good quarterback? And by that I mean a Carson Palmer, Aaron Rodgers, Cam Newton, Tom Brady.
Yes. Absolutely.
Wholeheartedly.
Absolutely. Yes.
But they haven't done that yet. They have not.
They Ben Roethlisberger.
They didn't really, though.
They held him to fewer points than the offense scored.
He had one touchdown.
But
you can get as many yards as you want.
It's exactly it.
Sure, but the team scored 30 points.
I would just think about all the trust that has to be built between that group, right? Because if I'm Earl Thomas and I love my buddy, but I don't quite trust him yet.
You love your buddy Cam Chancellor, and you have the trust.
What it does is it lets me
engage that trust.
It lets me, or you have to re-engage the trust. It lets me cheat an extra half yard.
Right.
That's all.
Which is all it takes.
In the NFL, that's all it takes.
Carson Palmer.
Okay,
Carson Palmer gets thrown into this.
But the Seahawks aren't the only team that goes through this. The Seahawks aren't the only secondary that grows together. They're not. This is among contenders for the crown. This is something every team goes through, is figuring out who they are. Cream rises to the top. They cull the cream, and that's what you present to your opponent, right? That's what good teams can do. So the Seahawks are one of those good teams, but they're not the only good team. So just because now they trust each other more or things are going better than they used to, That doesn't mean that they're better than the Cardinals, Panthers, Packers, Patriots, Broncos in terms of defenses or whatever.
Let's go back to last year. They were the number 1 seed. They didn't get the number 1 seed until the very last game of the regular season. There were a lot of good teams last year, just like there's a lot of good teams this year and the previous year. The Hawks are peaking at the right time to make that run.
How much is their pass defense peaking right now, though? Honestly, like statistically, yes.
But again, it's a team. Is the team peaking versus one specific segment of
this defense name me a top quarterback this year that they have like shut down the way they did in 2013, 2014? Because they haven't done it yet.
But it is not the Seahawks' fault that we didn't play the Panthers last week. You know, we have to go with what we see. The team was still not gelling when we played the top tier teams. It wasn't just a matter of the fact we were playing the top tier teams. It was also we were still working Cam Chancellor back in. Kerry Williams was going on. The team
who was it? Nichols.
Yeah, exactly. Richard was just getting his feet wet with the whole thing. And it is not the Seahawks' fault that the scheduling worked as it did. So we can only look at what we have. And what we have is the last 5 games where they have been dominating. Yeah. You know, minus the Pittsburgh game. But
that's the thing. The Pittsburgh game is the only game with a good quarterback.
But see they still managed to win the game.
And against a good quarterback, you're not going to shut them out or shut them down.
And that's the
you
thing
have to limit. They might get yards, but you have to limit points.
Jacson. Go ahead.
No. And it's going to be that way against the Carson Palmers. If you get to the Super Bowl, the Tom Brady's, it's always that way. Good quarterbacks, you don't stop. Like very, very rarely do good quarterbacks get stopped. Peyton Manning still had good yardage number in the Super Bowl versus us. He didn't have shit for touchdowns.
And Pete Carroll even said that. He said, look at the Super Bowl number, yardage.
Yeah, and that's so true, and it's always been that way. This defense plays better the closer to the goal line that they are. They're very good at making people kick field goals. And if they can force people to kick field goals as opposed to score touchdowns, this team is sitting beautiful. And if they're playing as well as they can beat anybody. If they're playing mediocre,
Jackson's in heaven.
If they're playing mediocre, they can lose to anybody at this point.
It's like the other thing is like, do you consider Carolina's defense like a great defense? Like most people, I'd say it's like one of the best defenses in the NFL. They've got superstar Josh Norman, superstar Luke Kuechly.
Thomas Davis Jr. is
that's
Charles Johnson.
Good.
Johnson.
So what did the Saints do to the Panthers?
Scored a bunch of points.
What did the Giants do to the Panthers?
Scored a bunch of points.
Right.
They won anyway.
And that's
matchups.
That is it. And that is always the way it is. Is that whether or not you're going to give up some yards, it comes down to the W. And that's what the fuck is going on right now.
And I think the bottom line is it's not binary. It's not can the defense beat a good quarterback. It's can the Seahawks beat a team that has a great quarterback? I think yes, they can. Yeah. They can also lose to them.
Yeah.
But again, it comes down to like that's why they play. Like
we're not going to play 7-0 games against Arizona and whoever in the playoffs.
But we can win 30-28.
Yes, and we can win 17-14.
Whereas, in 2013, mean, you're like holding great quarterbacks to 13 points. It's not the same defense.
So our defense is now more realistic to the norm of the NFL, but we have the offense.
It's not historically great.
Right.
And it's still second best in the NFL. It's still second best points-wise in the NFL.
Oh my God, good. It's really good, but we have the offense that is bordering on oh my God.
You guys are all fucking crazy. It's binary. Everything is either good or bad. And in that light, I want to talk about the thing that matters more than anything else in terms of deciding who's good and who isn't, and that's Pro Bowl voting. Today, so 2 days before you're seeing this, Pro Bowl teams were announced. 7 Seahawks got honors. Let's see if I can name them. I was trying to guessing them earlier. You got the 3 LOB members: Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas. Russell Wilson's a Pro Bowler. Doug Baldwin's an alternate. Bobby Wagner is a Pro Bowler, which well-deserved. Michael Bennett is a Pro Bowler, well-deserved. And my guy, the stocking stuffer, Tyler Lockett, is in and I feel very good about this because I tweeted in August that I think both Frank Clark and Tyler Lockett will be Pro Bowlers. We're halfway there. Tyler Lockett's in as a return man, and he's not a Pro Bowl receiver, but he will probably be a Pro Bowl receiver. It's interesting. Russell Wilson throwing to Tyler Lockett is the second most efficient quarterback to wide receiver combination in the NFL. You're talking about two guys who aren't a combined 12 feet tall are the second best, and the only combination that's better also isn't a combined 12 feet tall. It's Doug Baldwin and Russell Wilson. So, I mean, we're seeing something that's pretty amazing.
Does Doug Baldwin have like a shrine in his house for Tyler Lockett of just gratefulness for?
Yeah, because like,
Matt talked about this last week. How much of Doug Baldwin's success and like 4 of his 10 touchdowns have been wide the fuck open.
But then, and then last game we had with Curse, all of a sudden, we had the short
110
game with
yards?
Curse, where you knew that Lockett was going to pull him back, so that
It's Jordy Nelson and Randall.
Oh my God! It was like you were watching
He's
a
our Jordy Nelson,
symphony.
baby.
You know, like doo-doos. You know, and then it was.
You know what Curse was in the game last week against the Browns? He was Jimmy Graham. He was running.
No shit.
You know, so right before Graham got hurt, they were starting to really go to him on ISO plays where they'd like basically scheme him into a one-on-one and then just throw him the ball.
Do I not give Jermaine Kearse enough credit? Because I think Jermaine Kearse, before this last week, I have considered Jermaine Kearse to be replaceable. He'll catch what's there for him, but he'll disappear for 2 weeks at a time.
But
Have I underestimated him?
I think it's a matter of the offense.
No.
Is that we are finally seeing the offense running the way it's supposed to run. So if the offense is running the way it's supposed to run, then this is what Curse's role.
Yeah.
Maybe it's expanded because of Graham going down, and then you can go, oh shit, that's what Curse is there for, and he's perfect.
And all of these wide receivers are able to do their stuff because the offensive line has a fucking nice pocket now for Russell, and he's not worried about getting sniped by a guy that's completely missed on a block.
How did we go? We just went and.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about the Pro Bowl?
We're just going to keep going. We're going to turn the cameras off here in a minute here. But I want to thank you for tuning in. This is a show that I'm very proud to be a part of. I want to thank Isaac, Matt, Danny, and Brent for
Joel,
man.
Joel is like
honestly,
the unsung hero. Joel, he's amazing.
Joel is our offensive lineman.
Yes.
Yeah.
He is the JR.
He makes us look and sound good.
And
He does.
His feelings hurt if you don't say.
He does. Yeah. We're blessed to have him. We are running up against our time limit, so I'm going to sign off. The 5 of us are going to keep chatting. But until next week, this is Jacson Bevens from FieldGoals.com, and we'll catch you after the Seahawks beat the Rams.
Later.